The stars pulsed faintly in the black void, distant embers in a fire long forgotten. Ambassador Trell stood at the edge of the observation platform, his four slender fingers pressed against the cold transparency of the viewport. His breath fogged the air, despite the climate regulators humming softly in the walls. Outside, the decaying orbit of his homeworld loomed large and swollen, its surface streaked with crimson veins of atmospheric fracture. "There's no more time," he said quietly. Behind him, High Speaker Vorn's voice crackled from the communication node. "You are authorized to send the signal, Ambassador. But know this, we do not expect mercy." Trell closed his eyes. He had voted against a measure in the council chamber. Deathworlders were not allies. They were not even fully understood. They came from a planet ranked at the top of the Galactic Hazard Index, a swirling nightmare of tectonic instability, apex predators, and atmospheric volatility. The idea of contacting them for aid had been dismissed for decades as madness. Yet here he was, activating a long-abandoned subspace array from a forgotten relay station, orbiting a dead moon. The plea was brief, stripped of pride and protocol. "To any who can hear us, this is the Khari Dominion. Our sun destabilizes. We are 10 billion lives at the edge of extinction. We seek aid. We offer what we can. Please." He terminated the transmission before he could regret it. The silence that followed was not just the absence of sound. It was a weight of collective despair, heavier than the gravity of the failing planet below. Trell did not expect a response. 3 standard cycles passed. Then the stars changed. A signal that emerged on long-range sensors. At first, it was assumed to be an asteroid. Then it changed trajectory, precisely, impossibly. Within hours, 3 more signatures appeared, each larger than the last. By the end of the 4th day, the array station security grid had identified the configuration: angular hulls, dense armor plating, zero-emission heat signatures. Deathworlder ships. Trell watched their descent like a man watching a god fall to Earth. When they arrived, they did not dock. They burned atmosphere with precision and violence, clearing ground near Khari's polar observatory and landing with seismic impact. Black and gunmetal, their ships radiated function without vanity. They had not come to speak. Trell was chosen to meet them, not because of his title, but because it was his voice they had answered. He traveled in a low-altitude crawler, the surface of the planet trembling with each footstep of the human landing crafts. Automated drones hovered above the clearing, relaying visuals in real time. What Trell saw made his throat tighten. The first Deathworlder to emerge stood over 2 meters tall, armored in modular plating that pulsed faintly with orange bioluminescent lines. Their movement was efficient, unhurried. No ceremony. No weapons drawn, yet none hidden. More followed, each seemingly born of the same mold of brutality honed by necessity. The lead human removed their helmet. Pale skin, shaved scalp, a long scar over one eye. They looked directly at Trell and said, "You asked for help." Trell nodded. "Yes, we." "You'll get it," the human said, stepping past him. "But it won't be gentle." They began deploying equipment before formal introductions were exchanged. Modular structures unfolded like metal origami. Atmospheric stabilizers, mobile med stations, heavy lift mechs. The humans moved in synchronized teams, speaking in clipped, precise language. Every motion had purpose. There was no delay, no apparent need for instruction. It was as if they had trained for catastrophe their entire lives. Trell followed one unit to the makeshift medical center. Within hours, they had triaged over 2,000 Khari refugees. The human medics didn't flinch at necrotic plagues or radiation burns. One female medic, her dark hands stained with antiseptic foam, barked orders to a translator drone while performing what looked like invasive surgery with her bare fingers. "These people," Trell whispered, watching in awe, "they are not afraid of death." "No," came the response from beside him, the Deathworlder with the scar. "We brought it with us." Trell turned. "You are their commander?" "No, I'm their witness." The human stared toward the burning horizon. "Name's Ash. You asked." "We answered. But you need to understand, help for us is not a gift. It's a price. The word sank like stone into Trell's gut. What price? Ash finally turned toward him again. Survival. That's what we trade. We do what's needed. You might not like what that looks like. There was no threat in the tone. No arrogance. Just truth. From the distance came the sound of kinetic discharge, rapid, repeating. Kree militia had tried to seize human medical supplies for their own families. Ash didn't move. Your people are dying. Ours were born dying. We learned to stop waiting for permission. Trell watched as a human drone subdued the raiders with a concussive shockwave that flattened nearby structures but left the supply line intact. Your methods will terrify them, Trell said. They should, Ash replied. Terror is part of the cure. As night fell, the sky glowed with orbital trails. More ships were coming. Bigger ones. Trell sat alone beneath a black sky stitched with fire, his transmission tablet still in his hands. He didn't know what scared him more, that the Deathworlders had come, or that they were exactly what his people needed. Ash watched the dust settle as the dropships completed their descent, trailing ion scorch marks across the sky like battle scars. The Kree's planet, once hailed in the archives as a sanctuary of art and peace, now looked more like a wound struggling to scab over. Fires dotted the horizon. Infrastructure buckled. Panic clung to the air like static. She removed her gauntlet and pressed her palm to the dry soil. Radiation, minimal but climbing. The planet was bleeding from the inside. There wasn't much time. Behind her, Commander Vale disembarked from the secondary lander. Unlike Ash, he wore his helmet, not for safety but because he preferred to observe before revealing emotion. His voice filtered to the comms with a familiar cool cadence of military detachment. Scouting confirms planetary fractures are advancing north. Fault line convergence in 4 days. If they're not off this rock by then, they die. They're not leaving, Ash replied without looking up. Vale stepped closer, boots crunching brittle stone. Then they die. Ash stood. Not if we can change how they think before that. Thought reform in 4 days? He said, almost amused. You should have asked for more time. Or fewer aliens. Ash didn't respond. She was already walking toward the central hub they constructed from interlocking modular units, habitat pods, med centers, water synthesis units. Human efficiency, brutal and beautiful. In the middle of the encampment, Kree refugees gathered hesitantly, their wide eyes studying the Deathworlders like they might explode at any moment. Ash understood. To beings raised in equilibrium, humans must seem like storms made flesh. Dr. Rayner sat inside the med unit, sleeves rolled to his elbows, muttering curses as he spliced nanogel tubes into an improvised blood recycler. A Kree child lay unconscious on the table, skin mottled and blue from oxygen depletion. Ash hovered near the doorway. Vitals, she asked. Still shallow, Rayner grunted, but stable for now. Ash glanced at the child. Small, delicate, the ribs barely rising with breath. She'll live if no one interferes. He shot her a look, which is becoming the main issue. That was the conflict, not the dying planet, not the scarcity of time. It was the Kree themselves, culturally paralyzed. Their leaders, bred for consensus and ritual, delayed decisions until it was too late. Their people, conditioned to peace, didn't know how to respond to force that came without malice. They think we're here to conquer them, Ash said. They wouldn't be the first, Rayner replied. But they'd be wrong. She left him to his work and crossed the camp to the outer perimeter, where human engineers were rigging seismic charges to stabilize a mountain pass. The Kree Council had denied permission. Ash had already overruled them. She found Trell there, watching. You disobeyed our ruling, he said without turning. Your ruling would have killed 5,000 people living in that valley. Trell's face, normally unreadable, tightened. You assume you know best. You barely understand us. I understand enough to know your indecision is a luxury we can't afford, Ash said. Trell looked at the distant horizon, where a red haze blurred the edges of day. You act like war machines, not saviors. We're both, she answered, because when you grow up where we did, survival is war. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Trell's voice softened. There are factions rising. They don't trust your presence. They see occupation, not aid. Ash's jaw clenched. Let them see what they want. We're not here to win hearts. We're here to keep them beating. Unless they fight you, he said. Ash's eyes met his. Then we fight back harder. That night, the first skirmish broke out near a water distributor. A Kree militant group, cloaked in civilian garb, detonated an EMP device that knocked out half the camp's medical drones. One of Ash's tech teams was killed. A young woman named Calder who'd never held a weapon until she joined the relief division. Ash stood over her body, helmet off, eyes burning. Vale arrived seconds later. We predicted internal resistance. She was unarmed. She was human, he said. That was enough. The next morning, Ash delivered her first direct message to the Kree population. No translation filters. No diplomatic phrasing. The broadcast played across every open frequency. You asked for help. We came. And now you kill our medics and steal from your own wounded. We won't beg you to live. We'll give you the means. But you have to choose. We're not gods. We're not tyrants. We're the ones who crawl into the fire when everyone else runs. That fire is here. You either walk with us or burn without us. It wasn't elegant, but it was understood. After the message, something changed. Some Kree backed away further, whispering of monsters with hearts of iron. But others, more than before, started coming forward. Volunteers emerged. Not many, but enough to move supplies, clean infection units, translate patient conditions. Trell noticed it too. You speak with fear, he said to Ash later. Fear's not the enemy, she replied. Stagnation is. Trell sighed. And what happens when the ground breaks beneath us, and we're still arguing whether to run? Ash checked her datapad. The seismic readings were spiking again. Then I carry you, she said. And for the first time, he believed her. The tremors began before dawn. Ash woke to the sound of distant structures collapsing, their impacts reverberating to the ground like the thrum of a massive, slow-beating heart. Sirens blared in the human camp. Synced to seismic sensors calibrated to detect shifts in the planet's tectonic plates. This one was different, more sustained, less predictable. A harbinger, not a warning. By the time she reached the control center, the command table was awash in data. Cracks were spidering across the northern quadrant. The Polar Observatory, once the Korea's most advanced atmospheric monitoring station, had caved into a subterranean chasm. Vale glanced up as she entered, jaw tight. It's starting. We've got maybe 48 hours before the main fault ruptures. After that, we won't be able to guarantee safe evac corridors. We haven't finished stabilizing the East Sector. Ash said, that zone holds 30,000 civilians. They won't matter if the launch pads collapse. Vale countered. You want us to keep digging trenches, or you want us to get your people off-world? They're not my people, Ash said flatly. They're not anyone's anymore. That's why we're here. The line buzzed open before he could respond. A Kree voice crackled over the comms. Breathless, desperate. This is Subcoordinator Mina. We're under attack. Grid point 6 Delta. Internal faction. Armed. They've seized a transport crawler and disabled the evac lift. We're pinned down, multiple injured, requesting assistance. The signal broke. Ash didn't hesitate. Get a recon team to 6 Delta. Now. Vale didn't move. It's a trap. They know how we respond. They're baiting us. Ash turned to face him. And if they aren't, he stared back. Then we lose more personnel we can't replace. We don't get to choose who's worth saving, she snapped. We chose that when we answered the signal. She left before he could argue. The crawler roared across fractured terrain, its treads slicing through debris like razors. Inside, Ash adjusted her armor's shielding, eyes fixed on the horizon. Her team rode in silence. 6 operatives, veterans of collapsed zones and civil wars. But even they looked tense. Not because of fear, because they knew what Ash would do. She never flinched from walking into chaos. And she never left anyone behind. The 6 Delta outpost had already taken damage. A communications tower lay twisted and sparking. Civilians cower behind barricades, hastily constructed from transit crates. Ash spotted the crawler, now repurposed as a blockade. Kree militants in scavenged gear had mounted pulse weapons to its hull, sweeping the area in tight arcs. Ash's team deployed with machine precision. Non-lethal rounds first, concussive grenades next. The goal wasn't to kill. It was to disable, to reassert control without severing it completely. But the militants didn't share that restraint. One of Ash's team, Corbin, was hit in the shoulder before they reached cover. She dragged him back herself, blood smearing across her gauntlets. "We're not making it through that choke point," her lieutenant said, crouched beside her behind a broken hover hauler. "They've fortified the crawler. We need artillery." "We don't have time," Ash replied. She rose halfway and pointed toward the left flank, where a ventilation shaft led beneath the platform. "I'll flank. Keep them distracted. You'll get torn apart. Only if they see me." She vanished into the smoke and ruin. Ash moved fast. Her armor hissed with every breath she took, regulating temperature and dispersing microshocks from nearby blasts. The shaft was narrow, rusted, and stank of mold and ozone. She emerged behind a barricade, just meters from the hijacked crawler. Inside, 2 Kree rebels monitored the scanners. She could see it in their faces. They weren't hardened soldiers, just terrified citizens who thought fear justified firepower. Ash burst through the access panel and fired a flash round. The light blinded them long enough for her to disarm one and subdue the other. The crawler sputtered and died as she yanked the main conduit from its power core. Outside, her team advanced. The tide turned. When it was over, the rebels were bound, the wounded stabilized. Mina, the sub-coordinator, limped toward Ash, her uniform torn and eyes bloodshot. "I told them help was coming," she said, voice cracking. "They didn't believe me." Ash looked at the fallen crawler. "Belief isn't required. Survival is." Back at camp, word of the rescue spread fast. Some Kree whispered that Ash had walked into gunfire without flinching. Others called her reckless. A few began to call her by a name in their own tongue, Darkai. It meant Flamewalker. Trell found her near the med bay, where Corbin lay sedated but stable. He said nothing at first, just stood beside her, watching the drip of fluid into the young man's arm. "You could have died," he finally said. "I'm not here to live forever," she replied. "Just long enough to help you do it." He studied her, not with skepticism this time, but something closer to respect. "There's another council meeting tonight," he said. "Some of them want to negotiate evacuation slots. Prioritize families of officials. Cut deals." Ash's jaw tensed. "You know my answer." "Yes," Trell nodded. "But they don't. I need you to tell them yourself." She exhaled, slow and controlled. "Then I will." The sun had begun to die faster now. The orange hue no longer painted warmth but foretold fire. The planet was shifting beneath them, a slow-motion collapse. But for the first time, the Kree had someone standing in the fracture, refusing to let it widen without a fight. The sky split open with a sound like the world tearing itself apart. Ash stood atop the launch platform's control tower, wind tearing at her armor as she watched the horizon fracture. A fault line erupted like a wound, spitting molten rock into the heavens. The seismic data had been right. The Kree world had reached terminal instability. The crust was collapsing inward, and time was gone. Below her, the evacuation zone swarmed with movement. Kree civilians flooding into launch corridors, human engineers barking commands, stabilization drones sweeping for structural faults. The air trembled with urgency. Every second wasted was a life lost. Inside the command center, Vale was already running final launch diagnostics. His expression was a grim mask of precision. 10 more ships can lift before atmospheric collapse spikes beyond tolerance. That's 200,000 evac slots. We got 400,000 still waiting. Ash didn't flinch. Then we moved faster. She stepped into the main chamber. The council was there, what remained of them. Trell stood apart from the others, his face drawn but resolute. Counselor Duran, cloaked in regalia that meant nothing now, turned to her with a tremble of defiance. "You can't prioritize the outer districts," he said. The core cities house our lineage. Our scientists. We will die with the rest if you don't shut up and move. Ash snapped. Gasps rippled through the chamber. Ash ignored them and stepped forward. You had your chance to organize, to plan. You failed. We didn't come to sort your aristocracy from your starving. We came to keep as many of you breathing as possible. We decide who loads, based on risk zones, mobility, exposure, and medical need. Not bloodlines. Not titles. Not fear. Darren's lips twisted. You have no authority here. Ash's eyes burned. I have the ships. I have the soldiers. And I have the seconds that your indecision is wasting. Silence. Trell spoke next, voice calm but edged with steel. You've seen what she's done, what they've done. If survival is still your goal, then let the Deathworlders lead. No one objected again. Outside, the wind screamed louder. Ash moved with ruthless efficiency. Evac tiers shifted. Ground crews rerouted pathways to maximize throughput. Human soldiers ran shoulder to shoulder with Kree volunteers. The final lifts were being loaded, heat thrumming beneath their hulls. Ash's comm buzzed. Raynor's voice crackled through, sharp and panicked. Central med units under threat. Structures buckling. We've got patients we can't move fast enough. I need someone to buy me time. Ash didn't hesitate. On my way. She ran through collapsing corridors, her boots slamming against trembling steel. Flames burst from ruptured pipelines. The sky was nearly black now, choked with smoke and ash. The planet was exhaling its last breath. She reached the med unit just as a support beam cracked. Inside, Raynor and 2 Kree medics were dragging stretchers toward the exit. One was a child, Mina's niece, unconscious and swallowed in bioskin. The rest were burn victims, hypoxic workers, the frail and dying. Ash took the beam's weight on her back, servos in her armor groaning. Go, she shouted. They moved, slowly, painfully, but they moved. The last patient cleared the exit as the ceiling began to drop. Ash rolled free just as the structure collapsed behind her in a storm of smoke and fire. Outside, she lay coughing in the dust, lungs burning. Raynor hauled her to her feet. Still alive, he said. Barely, she muttered. Good enough. The final ships were lifting now. The launch pads glowed with searing energy, leaving molten scars on the earth. Ash stumbled toward the last transport. Vale was already at the ramp. We've got to go, he called. Atmosphere's destabilizing. Ash turned. Hundreds of Kree still pushed toward the camp edge, too far to reach the pads. She looked back at the ship, then at the evac drone modules stacked near the loading zone, automated, limited, but capable. We're not done, she said. She activated her comm, overriding the ship's system. Initiate drone deployment. Remote control. Tether them to the launch grid and run them in low-altitude sweep. If they burn out mid-flight, we'll still buy them distance. Vale didn't argue. He understood her now. The drones launched with a scream, skimming the surface like guided angels, scooping the last evacuees from the brink. Ash climbed the ramp as the launch countdown reached 10. Her armor was scorched, cracked at the shoulders, her face streaked with ash. Trell was inside, seated among the rescued. He met her gaze. You stayed longer than anyone else would have. Ash slumped against the bulkhead and smiled faintly. That's what we do. The ship rose, engines burning white. Below them, the surface of the Kree world fractured, then folded inward with a sound that silenced the stars. No one spoke, not for hours. Later, as the fleet drifted beyond the reach of the collapsing system, Ash stood once more at a viewport. The world they'd left was gone, swallowed by its own fury. But something else remained, a promise, forged in flame and resolve. Trell stood beside her. You could have let us fall. Ash nodded. But we didn't. He studied her expression, then offered a slight bow. Not ceremonial, not formal, but honest. Thank you, Flamewalker. She didn't reply. She didn't need to. The Deathworlders had come. They had answered, and the galaxy would not forget what it had cost.